My name is Hilary Mantel. I hope to be visiting you in Italy this autumn, but instead I'm speaking to you from my home in England. And I would like to introduce my new novel, which brings to a conclusion my trilogy about Thomas Cromwell, Chief Minister to Henry VIII, King of England. We begin the story in May 1536, just 1 minute after a violent death, the beheading of Anne Boleyn, the King's second wife, on charges of treason and adultery. As Thomas Cromwell watches the 4 veiled women who wrap the severed head for burial, he knows that one phase of his own life has drawn to a close. He has further to climb on his ascent to power and honours, and he has titles to win. Anne was his rival for influence, but her death doesn't solve his problems. In fact, they're about to intensify as he finds himself drawn in to the story of Henry's young daughter, the Princess Mary. Henry is threatening her life if she will not obey him. Mary wishes to be a martyr. Cromwell must struggle for the souls of both and save them from themselves. So his journey continues and leads him, 4 years later, to the scaffold himself, to a meeting with the executioner at the Tower of London on a hot day in July 1540. Cromwell was a talented and a most unusual man. His family were obscure. His father was a blacksmith and a brewer, a violent man and a drunk. Cromwell escaped him when he was 15, crossing the sea, fighting with the French army, campaigning in Italy, escaping a battle to become a servant to a banker in Florence. He works in Rome and Venice, and when we meet him in the 3rd book, we understand that his tenderest memories are of Italy, and that his mind dwells on the kind of man he might have become if he had stayed there. But instead, he made his way back to a colder climate, first to Antwerp, and then to London, and eventually into the service of the king. Henry is now in middle age. He's no longer the glamorous young sportsman and lover, the golden boy, but a man who has carried the burden of kingship for 30 years. As he marries his 3rd wife, Jane, he's weary, disillusioned, in chronic pain from a leg injury, a dangerous master, but in Cromwell's view, the only master worth serving. The king and his minister are bound together, threatened by both enemies on the outside and their own moral and physical failings. They endure crisis and loss. Cromwell always hopeful, resilient, his eyes on the future and a new Europe, until the moment when Henry turns against him and begins to believe that his most loyal servant is planning his overthrow. This book is my 15th book, and my trilogy has been the central project of my writing life. I feel we owe respect and duty to the dead, to make sure their stories are told properly. I've lived for 15 years with Thomas Cromwell, always feeling there was more to find out, more to understand. I hope my readers in Italy will like to join me on this last exploration. I should like to thank them for their encouragement, and thank also my publisher and the booksellers who've worked hard to put the book into your hands. You may ask, what does this story have to offer to a reader in 2021? My answer is that it is full of people and situations that you will recognise. The time and place are very particular, and the story sticks closely to the historical record. But there are certain themes that are universal. Parents and children, husbands and wives, masters and servants, the pursuit of love and what happens when the love object is caught, political power, how it is sought, achieved, abused, the clash between ideals and pragmatism, between youth and age, hope and experience, between human altruism and the brutal need to survive. All these stories speak to a modern audience, and I hope they will speak to you. Since I finished this final volume, I've often been asked if there's a hole in my life, whether I'm sad, whether I miss the man I've lived with for so long. But I have no sense that Cromwell is dead. I've spent the last few months in my apartment in a small town by the sea, watching the waves from my window and creating a stage version of the story. I've undertaken this with the actor Ben Miles, who played Thomas Cromwell in the earlier theatre adaptations. We hoped and intended to work together on every line, but because of the strange and isolating times we've been living through since last spring, we've hardly seen each other. However, we have made a play, and we move forward optimistically, trusting that theatre will be possible next year and that our characters will walk and talk before a live audience. There'll be, at some point, a television version made by the team who adapted the earlier books. So, Thomas Cromwell will be part of my life for many years to come. I hope he will become part of yours too, and that the story will carry you beyond these difficult days and last in your imagination, as it does in mine.